Hello, everyone, and welcome to Lesson 11-1. This lesson is on September 11th, 2001. Back in our last unit, we quickly brushed over this as a part of the whole conservative movement and a discussion of the Bush presidency, but now I want to take some time to really focus just on this event. Terrorism in September 11th, 2001 was not a new threat. Terrorism has existed for millennia. For thousands of years, terrorism has been used to advance political goals of particular groups. When a group is at a significant military disadvantage, that is, they don't have an army that could compare with another army, say the Americans, they usually resort to some level of terrorist strikes. Terrorists, however, don't usually see themselves this way. Instead, they see themselves as freedom fighters. In fact, the definition there can be blurred. If we go back to the American Revolutionary times, certainly some of the U.S. actions against the British Empire appeared to be those of terrorists. So you can see how this line can easily be blurred. Now, strikes against the United States have also not been, a brand new thing since 9/11. This is because the U.S. achieved pretty much complete military dominance in the world after the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991. Since 1991, there has been no military that could win a traditional war against the United States. They cannot compete. We are too powerful. So those who want to resist United States actions or ideas or the spread of American culture are forced to use non-military means to do so. Now, the organization Al-Qaeda, the ones who are responsible for the September 11th terrorist attacks, were formed in 1988 for the express purpose of resisting United States and European influence from spreading in Muslim-majority nations. And they used these tactics to attack both military and civilian targets. Whatever they saw as a threat to their way of life was something that could and should be attacked. To this end, Al-Qaeda bombed the World Trade Center in 1993. 8 years before September 11th, they tried to bring those towers down. They also bombed 2 American embassies in 1998 and a U.S. warship, the U.S. Cole, in the year 2000. So this was not the first time that Al-Qaeda had struck the U.S. Now, Al-Qaeda itself was founded and led by Osama Bin Laden, this fellow right here. He was the leader of this terrorist organization. Now, from 1979 until 1989, he used his wealth and his influence largely to fight against the Soviet Union. Before the Americans were his enemy, the Soviets were his enemy, for much the same reason. The Soviets had invaded and occupied Afghanistan, and Afghanistan, being a Muslim-majority nation, being subjected by a non-Muslim nation, was his enemy, was his target. And he believed that all non-Muslims, the Soviets then and the Americans now, should be forced away from Muslim nations. So when the United States became more involved in the Middle East following the Persian Gulf War in 1992, this angered Osama bin Laden, 91. This angered Osama bin Laden and brought his attention to the United States. So the actual day, the actual attack. On September 11th, 2001, Al-Qaeda took over 4 commercial airliners, 4 planes, and used them as guided missiles to fly them into targets. 2 of those 4 planes struck the World Trade Center in New York, one striking each of the 2 largest buildings, World Trade Center 1 and World Trade Center 2. A third was then directed at the Pentagon, which is a military building in the United States. So here we were attacking the economy of the United States, symbol of the economy, and here's a symbol of the United States military power being intentionally targeted. These strikes killed about 3,000 people. Now, the 4th plane was supposed to strike the U.S. Capitol building, or at least that's the belief, that's the theory, a symbol of the United States government. However, it was crashed in a field in Pennsylvania when the people on the plane tried to recapture the plane from the hijackers. That recapture effort failed, but the plane was crashed in the process. It killed everybody on board, but the plane did no additional damage. So, how did this happen? Well, in July of 2001, the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, informed the White House, the president, that Al Qaeda would attack soon, that they were planning an attack. But they did not know the specifics. They didn't know how, they didn't know when, they didn't know where. They just had picked up that there was going to be an attack and that it would be soon. By August of 2001, the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, suspected that there were individuals who were planning to hijack a plane. But the FBI and the CIA did not share important data very well on this issue, and they never connected the dots between Al Qaeda planning an attack and the FBI knowing that a hijacking may happen soon. And so those dots were not connected in a way that led to anything that could prevent the strike. So on 9/11, these strikes happened, and many Americans performed many heroic acts that helped to save lives. 9/11, 411 emergency workers, firefighters predominantly, died while performing rescues. 340 of those 411 were those New York firefighters who had rushed into these burning buildings to try to rescue people, and then those buildings collapsed. Additionally, 40 people on United 93, that plane that was supposed to hit the U.S. Capitol building, died while attempting to recapture their plane. They had learned what was going to happen. They had learned that planes were being used as missiles, and so they attempted to recapture the plane or to crash that plane. So the fallout of the attack, what happens? The greatest impact of the 9/11 attacks was to instill fear in Americans. It made Americans fearful again. In the wake of these attacks, we believed that we would be attacked and we would be attacked again soon. Americans all across the country felt that the next attack was going to happen and going to happen soon. It was just this fear that we lived with and lived with for a long time. And so the country moved quickly to protect ourselves. We had to defend ourselves against the next 9/11 attack. And so we have heightened security in America now. Airport security checks are much more difficult to pass through. You've got to go through several stages of security and take off your shoes before you go through the security gates. Additional things are not allowed on planes that used to be on planes. You can't walk people all the way to their plane anymore. These are all brought about because of these terrorist attacks. The government has also increased their authority to spy on citizens. We can spy on our own citizens more easily because of the United States of America Patriot Act. Additionally, we now have the Homeland Security Office, which monitors all of our intelligence, so that this FBI-CIA mix-up is less likely to happen again. And finally, probably the biggest impact on America is what we call the war on terror. The United States of America is at war with terrorism. This begins with Al Qaeda, but it's not supposed to end until every terrorist group has been found, stopped, and defeated. Well, the problem here is that, one, there's no definition of terrorism, and there's no way to clearly identify who is a terrorist and who isn't. So this is an open-ended war. This is a war that will never end. And the problem extends further. When you don't define terrorists legally, then you can define them in your political rhetoric however you want. You can define them as whoever's point of view is in opposition to your own, and you can label them as terrorists. So the war on terrorism began quite a while ago, a couple decades ago almost now, and it will continue indefinitely unless something is dramatically changed. All right, so that was the 9/11 terrorist attacks. I hope that you learned something from today's lesson. I'll see you next time, and farewell.